Hello, friends. I am Rose. Welcome to Story with Blue Lady, where we bring you stories full of wonder and excitement. Let's get started. Today's story is The Hungry Mouse. Once upon a time, in a quiet little meadow surrounded by towering trees and blooming flowers, there lived a small, curious mouse named Milla. Milla had always been an energetic mouse, always darting here and there, gathering bits of food to store for the colder months. But as fate would have it, one year, the meadow experienced an unusual dry spell. The once plentiful landscape, filled with fruits and grains, had become barren. Milla searched high and low, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find anything to eat. Days turned into weeks, and Milla began to grow weaker and thinner. She was no longer the sprightly mouse she used to be, and her once shining eyes grew dull with hunger. Her stomach grumbled constantly, and she became desperate for food. Every corner she turned seemed empty. Every little hole and burrow she checked yielded nothing. Milla's energy was nearly depleted, but she refused to give up. One fateful day, while wandering through a part of the meadow she hadn't explored in a long time, Milla spotted something unusual. It was an old basket, carelessly left behind by a farmer who had harvested his crops months ago. Milla's nose twitched as she detected the faint but enticing smell of corn. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Could there be food inside? She rushed over to the basket, her eyes wide with hope. The basket was tightly woven, and its top was sealed shut, but Milla's sharp eyes quickly noticed a tiny hole at the bottom. It was small, barely enough for her frail body to squeeze through. Without hesitation, she wiggled her way through the hole, inching inside the basket. Inside, Milla's eyes grew wide with delight. There, piled high, were golden, plump kernels of corn, enough to last her for many days. She had never seen so much food in one place. Overwhelmed with joy and relief, Milla began to eat. She nibbled on one kernel after another, her hunger driving her to eat more and more. The corn tasted sweet and delicious, and after so many days of starvation, Milla couldn't control herself. She kept eating and eating, not realizing how full she was becoming. Hours passed, and Milla continued to feast, her tiny belly growing rounder with every bite. She was so focused on the food in front of her that she didn't stop to think about how much she had already eaten. It wasn't until she tried to stand up that she realized something was wrong. Her legs felt heavy, and her stomach was so full it was hard to move. Milla looked down at herself in shock. She had grown much larger than before. "Oh no!" she gasped, feeling the weight of her bloated body. "I've eaten too much." Worried, Milla waddled toward the tiny hole she had entered through. But when she tried to squeeze through, she found that she couldn't fit. The hole that had once been large enough for her thin body was now far too small for her plump figure. Panic set in. She pushed and squirmed, but no matter how hard she tried, she was stuck inside the basket. "Oh no! What have I done?" Milla cried, her voice trembling with fear. "I've eaten so much that I can't get out." Desperate, she began to shout for help. "Help! Somebody, Please help me." A nearby rat, named Remy, who had been foraging for food in the same area, heard Milla's cries and scurried over to investigate. When he saw Milla trapped inside the basket, he couldn't help but chuckle. "Milla, what happened to you?" Remy asked, shaking his head in amusement. "Oh, Remy, it's terrible," Milla sobbed. "I found all this corn, and I ate and ate until I became too fat to get out. Now I'm trapped inside this basket." Remy scratched his chin thoughtfully and smiled. "Well, Milla, it seems like you've learned a valuable lesson today. But what am I going to do? I can't stay in here forever," Milla exclaimed, her eyes wide with worry. Remy nodded. "It's simple. You're going to have to wait until you lose some of that extra weight. Stop eating the corn for a while, and soon enough, you'll slim down and be able to fit through the hole again." Milla's heart sank. The thought of waiting inside the basket while her hunger slowly returned filled her with dread. But I'm trapped in here with all this food. How can I possibly resist?" Remy gave her a kind smile. "It's not easy, Milla, but sometimes we have to learn to control ourselves. You've already eaten more than enough, and now you'll have to wait. Don't worry, though, it won't take long. In a few days, you'll be thin enough to get out." Milla sighed deeply. She knew Remy was right, but the thought of going hungry again was hard to bear. She settled down inside the basket, her bloated belly making it difficult to move, and resigned herself to the fact that she would have to wait. Days passed, and Milla slowly began to feel the effects of her overindulgence wear off. As her body began to shrink, she could feel herself getting lighter and thinner. It wasn't easy. The smell of the corn was always there, tempting her, but Milla resisted the urge to eat more. She remembered Remy's words and realized that sometimes too much of a good thing could be dangerous. Slowly but surely, her body returned to its normal size. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Milla felt small enough to try squeezing through the hole again. Holding her breath, she wiggled her way toward the tiny opening and, with one last push, managed to slip through to freedom. "Oh, thank goodness," Milla exclaimed as she tumbled out of the basket. She was free at last. She looked around the meadow, breathing in the fresh air and feeling the warm sun on her fur. She had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, self-control was more important than satisfying immediate hunger. From that day forward, Milla was much more careful about how much she ate. She realized that having too much of anything, even something as wonderful as food, could lead to trouble. She thanked Remy for his wise advice and continued to live happily in the meadow, always remembering that moderation was key. And so, the lesson remained clear: anything too much is good for nothing. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more magical adventures. Until next time.